Hi, I'm Tom Maynard, founder of Amplify.
Hey, I'm Ben Parsons. Welcome to the Player Power podcast with Tom Maynard from Amplify. There's so many questions.
Super excited to answer them.
Okay, you're an athlete. No idea. You're swimming in the abyss. And you've decided that you want to start getting into this social media thing. Should they do it?
Without a shadow of a doubt, yes, they should do it.
Why?
Why should they do it? The ability to own your own audience and have a direct relationship and build a community is so valuable in the 21st century.
Go big time with me. If you're if you're a big influencer in Australia right now,
yep.
How much are you earning?
I would say, if you're a big influencer, if let's say you've got 5-10 million subscribers on YouTube, you could easily be earning $5 to $10 million a year.
So ingredients to be going from zero to some sort of audience?
Firstly, passion. You've got to be excited about creating content. So you really need to be thinking about something or a particular content strand that you can get up every morning and create something around. So the ability it's a long game, right? So you want to be able to establish yourselves and create content for the next 12, 24 months, even 10 years. But you want to be able to produce something that you can consistently do. So I guess the authenticity and passion are the two key ingredients to that.
When does an athlete, because this is a new world, right? They've got I think, a bias in their favour, right? One is they always can generate publicity through above the line media. And then the second thing is that platforms favour their algorithm just simply because they create stickiness to it. But if you're an athlete that just has done nothing in this area and you're just trying to start,
yeah.
What should be a realistic goal? Are you saying I should be starting to make money in 12 months or sooner? Like if you're getting consistent?
If you're passionate about it, that's why I say going back to passion, don't think about money straight away. I know you don't want to hear that, but don't think about it straight away because the money will come as soon as you start to gain an audience and as soon as that community gets built, it'll come. Don't worry about it. If you can build that audience to whether it's 1,000 followers, 10,000 followers, 100,000 followers, the money is going to come. But make sure you can commit to creating content every single day. So focus on a bit of subject matter that you're actually passionate about. And it doesn't have to be sport. Although you're good at sport, it doesn't have to be sport. There's heaps of examples of athletes who are actually good cooks that do cooking videos, or another favorite of mine, I don't know if you know a footballer called Dele Alli in the EPL, really good Fortnite player. And Mitch Robinson, who's an AFL player, really good Fortnite player too. So picking a subject that you're passionate about and the ability to create content around that subject is the key thing.
So one of the things that we try and impart, right, is most people have somewhere between 2 to 5 brand pillars, and all you're trying to do is authentically identify your brand pillars and put that on social media and just keep consistency inside of it. When you're first starting to build audience and that, when you're building a brand, you try and build it up through other brands, right? Bigger brands than what you are. How do you think they should collaborate? What would be your collaboration advice as you're just starting out?
Once again, I hate kind of going back to the same point, but what you're passionate about, look at that, focus on that, and figure out who in that world is creating content in that particular content category. So whether you're into gaming, collaborate with other gamers. They don't have to be AFL stars or sports stars or athletes. Collaborate with them, do live streams together, but focus on people that are already creating content in your particular passion point and collaborate with them.
And how do you start with brands? If you're in, and let's use Fortnite as the example, right? Yeah. You're already excited and you're already producing content. How do you establish a relationship with a brand?
Oh, that's a hard one. Usually, they're pretty active on social. Most brands are pretty active on social. So I would even just like, whether it's via Twitter or X, reach out to that brand directly, whether it's through an Instagram DM or a YouTube comment. You can actually reach out to them directly, say you want to collaborate, let's do something, I want to work with you. It's really easy. It's not too hard, but persistence beats resistance.
Well, it's like training, right? You just got to keep training and you'll eventually get there. So when you secure a brand and then they say, well, how much for the collaboration?
Yeah, as much as possible. Get a manager, get an agent. No, I think like if you're once again, if you're passionate about the brand, you like what they're doing, you want to work with them for a long term, like don't take the piss. I guess it's quite hard to know what's a fair price. It really depends on a lot of different factors: follower count, audience growth, brand perception in general. A lot of different things to think about when pricing something. But if you want to work with somebody from a long-term perspective, whether it's for an ambassadorship or something for a 6 to 12 month campaign, I would try and do something that you're happy with personally, you think is a good deal, and propose that to them.
Do you recommend, if you want to work with the brand, that they produce a piece of content that's in line with what you've seen about the brand with influencers and send it to them? Like, how do you do it? How do you cut through?
How do you cut through? I mean, yes, that helps. But it can come across as a bit cringe or a bit needy. Like, it's like that old girlfriend-boyfriend relationship. You don't want to show really, really keen interest. Otherwise, they're probably going to exploit you as much as they can and try and get as good deal as possible. But I would definitely feel free to reach out from them, collab with them from a social media perspective, or if you have a manager or if you have an agent, get them to reach out to that particular brand also.
Okay. Now, what are you seeing content-wise in terms of how are the influencers that you work with, what's their routine to keep them relevant?
Got to keep up with trends. There's always something new happening that is kind of cutting through audiences. In terms of platforms, I mean, this will date quite, well, I shouldn't say that. In terms of platforms, there's a few key players out there at the moment. I would focus on, once again, what you're passionate about in terms of a platform. So TikTok's a really important platform at the moment. Instagram is always really important. YouTube can get some really, really big numbers still around it, especially with shorts, but it's a really good way of building your community. Even podcasts like this, right? We kind of look at podcasts as almost like the closing of the funnel. So I think of, not to use too much marketing jargon here, it's a big funnel. You're trying to get your community far and wide, make really kind of social viral content at the start. That's kind of Instagram Reels, that's TikTok Reels, and then slowly bring them down the funnel to create a really, really strong community. And when we look at creators or influencers, to be honest, the brand deals is just the cream on the top. What we really want to do for creators is actually for them to monetize their audience directly with the community. So whether that's Patreon or podcasts or merchandise or all these kind of things that you can build a community around and commercialize your community, that's really the holy grail for us, not necessarily just brand deals. That should really equate to 20-30% of your overall earnings.
Well, I think the best athletes that I've seen are people like Jonathan Thurston, where he's got the Jonathan Thurston rugby school, right?
Yeah.
And then he gets all of this government sponsorship in on top of it. I think
Yeah, you're right. Jonathan Thurston's done an incredible job, but what you really need is that saying, 1,000 true fans, right? 1,000 true fans paying you $10, $50 a month. It's going to all add up, right? And that really gives you the ability to sustain your content output. You can hear what your audience wants. They're going to tell you what you actually want, especially when they're paying you for that content.
And I want to touch on this rate card because it seems to be the elusive myth. And you know, my time in media is when we built integration models, right? And I won't mention the big advertising agency that helped us build it, but you know, they would put loading in for live and for the production and the talent fee and all of that. The way the world seems to, in the vernacular inside of it, seems to be, you know, 4% of your audience seems to be the baseline of your rate card, and then you build in all that attributes inside of it. How are you building your rate cards with your
The way we build rate cards, we have a load of different factors inside of that. But we usually charge per reel or per video. Is that video going to be distributed across Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube? How many months do they actually want to use that content for boosting? So it could be 1 month boosting costs X amount of dollars. But there's no, I'm going to be honest, like there's no real rhyme or reason. It's like, sometimes you can have 1 million followers, but people don't want to advertise with you, right? Like your content just might not work for that particular brand. So it's really about supply and demand, right? We don't want to commoditize creators and have a race to the bottom and too much standardization around rates. It's really about how in demand is that in particular creator versus what we think their rates should be.
So because that's a really good point, right? Because at the moment, I divide sport into two worlds. There's the broadcast sports and then there's non-broadcast sports. So if you're a non-broadcast sports athlete, you've got the ability then, according to you, is to be charging just as much as a broadcast sports person.
For sure.
It's just depending on demand.
If you've got an audience, if you've got 10,000 followers, 100,000 followers, 200,000 followers, whatever that number is, it's generally a sliding scale. And if you've got an engaged audience, if you've got an Australian audience, there's a lot of value in that.
And where do you think they should start for their analytics side of things to help them just get some grounding on, okay, this is my audience?
All of the platforms now have some kind of analytics so you can understand your audience, whether that's Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, or X, TikTok. You can get a pretty deep understanding of where your audience are located, what gender they are, how engaged they are with your content. Are they watching the whole thing? Just where are they discovering you? There's endless amounts of data that can be sourced, but I guess it's like trying to nail like what you're really wanting to understand from them.
What do you put in your proposal then if there's so much data? What do the clients want to see, and what do you put in your proposal?
I think when you're putting something to a client, they want to know what age your demographic is, where they're actually located, how engaged they are actually with your content, and also the age and sex.
Can we just talk about engagement? Because one of the things that a couple of athletes were a bit taken back is one of them had, I'll not name the person, had a 2.4% engagement, and they thought it was really horrific because they thought it was out of 100%, which obviously it is. But what's when you see data and you go, oh, that's they're doing a good job. What's that look like?
Yeah, I think don't necessarily look at things as a percentage. Because it can kind of steer you in a weird direction. But yeah, 2.5% is pretty decent. It's not too bad. But I would say like look at the comments. How many people are commenting? How engaging are they? Are the comments? Are they just tagging people in that particular video, or are they actually asking a question and asking to do something else? So I would say like look at the comments, look at the likes, look at the shares, look at the actual watch time. We measure how much of a particular bit of content has somebody watched as an engagement metric too.
Back in the day, and I won't name the sports international brand, but I worked with a consultant that consulted on how they should value their stuff. And you just spoke about it, and they had a really basic rate scorecard where they would say 1 point for a like, 3 points for a comment and 5 points for a share. And that's how they used to basic scorecard it to say that's what that post did or that post didn't do across the board. I know it's much more, slightly more sophisticated these days in terms of, because what you're trying to do is organic versus paid and all of those sort of things. But if, again, you're starting out with the real fundamental basics, how do you not let the data overconsume you and you get scared and you think you're not doing a great job?
How do you not get? I would once again pick something you're passionate about.
No, but in data.
Yeah, I know, and it's like don't concentrate too much on data. Data's going to be, always going to sway you into a particular direction in terms of if you're doing a good job or a bad job. If you're happy to get up every morning and create that content, that should really be your North Star or your guiding light. But in terms of data being a roadmap, use it, guide you, but really use your gut feeling, I think, to know if content's working. You'll know you're going to get more comments on something, people are going to react to something. Sometimes the best content creators I know that have millions and millions of followers, they think it's the worst video that they've put out and it ends up doing the best. You never know. You honestly, a lot of the time, you just never know if content's going to fly or work for you.
So athletes, train because they want to be the best at whatever sport discipline. And this grey, murky area over here called social media is putting themselves in the public persona. And that's why we really created Player Power, was to try and figure out how we could help them so they actually had some coaching off the field, right? The influencers that you've worked with, when they first started to where they are now, and in terms of money and everything that they're turning over, when you first started the business, did you think it'd be as big as it is today?
Yeah, and I still believe it's going to get bigger too. Like the world of media is fragmenting, right? More and more and more. Like these big media monoliths of yesteryear, they're going to be a thing of the past. We look at creators, influencers, whatever you want to call them. Look at yourself as your own media brand. Social is one component of that. So there's a huge amount of opportunity there to kind of create a long-standing media brand. And the longevity is going to be there for the next 10, 20 years. Yeah,
well, that's sort of the way we've always thought about it too, which is you if you're an athlete, you can own the channel, right? You can own your audience directly, where the old days where you'd have to be on certain TV and components at certain times.
Yeah, and it's, you used to be like a few people of power, the editor of a paper to give you a piece on every Sunday, or an executive producer at one of the networks to put you on the footy show. You got to be close. That doesn't exist anymore. All those kind of barriers are gone. You are, I guess, the master of your own destiny there.
And probably the best way to help people understand it, I see so much content end up on news, like, oh, this has happened, and it's a video from someone's own channel, and I look at that and go, the world has completely changed and will continue to change forever, because owned audience are more valuable than bought audience because of the organic side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more there.
So you start building an audience, and your manager isn't really strong in social media, great at contract negotiations, great at other things. I've started to see the odd person splinter off, and their manager manages their athlete contract and somebody else manages their other side of them. What do you think makes a good manager for that side of things?
Specifically for the social side of things?
Yeah.
I think like their relationships with the platforms, like having good relationships with the platforms is a really, really key thing. So you can know like the latest tech that's coming out, the trends that are working, get you in front of the right people at the platforms, whether it's to get you verification or whether your content's being banned, they can help you out. That's one key piece. I think the second key thing for having a good manager in social is like understanding the value of the content that's being created by the athlete. So that's critical. And then thirdly, I would say understanding the value of community. And like that's kind of going back to what we talked about earlier around like it's a funnel, right? Like you're trying to push people down a funnel. And the being able to leverage and point your community, your 10,000 followers to your new podcast or whatever that new initiative is really, really valuable. So having somebody that can understand like what kind of knobs you have to push in order to get there is going to be the key to your future.
Okay, so what makes a good response to a brief?
Firstly, read the brief. You'd be surprised at how many people don't actually read the brief and just feel like a brand's just throwing money at people and just hoping for the best. So firstly, read the brief. Be on time, like make sure you're submitting your content on time, and like good manners. Communicate. It's really basic, simple things. Like it's such a small industry, this world too. If you're shitty to deal with, you're going to get a bad name very, very quickly, and you're not going to get any more deals. It's a small industry in a lot of ways, so make sure you treat people respectively, and make sure your content's on time. Make sure it's on brief also.
If you're an athlete, if you're female or you're a rookie, right, and you're starting to play with this because you're trying to supplement your income, you're trying to go from semi-pro to pro so you can concentrate on your sporting efforts. When you start the journey and people start to heckle you in the team, because it's a team culture, I see, unless you're doing some individual sport like swimming, how do you keep your talent on course? Like, what are you saying to them that are having that moment where they're like, I've had 59 bad comments and I'm just not there?
Yeah. I hate to kind of go back to the EPL and soccer again, but Sir Alex Ferguson has a great line. Like the best advice that he ever got was, don't read the papers. And same goes for social, right? Like, do not read the comments. Nothing good when you go through a bad period like that is going to come from those comments. The platforms have a lot of work to do to kind of help athletes and the community at large to be able to kind of navigate that, because there's still a lot of trolls. There's a lot of hate on social media. So I know you don't want to hear it, but like try and bury your head in the sand. Focus on the content, focus on what you're good at, and don't necessarily get too bogged down with the hate that you're receiving online.
One of our other masterclass specialists, Christy, we were having a conversation just around what makes a good ambassador. And we were talking through really, and you sort of touched on them, like, just having basics of manners inside of it. And if you're a profile athlete and you're on primetime television and you've got a lot of exposure, you've got this unique opportunity to bring people into a world that they salivate over on a pretty consistent basis, and you can bring them and do things with them that most other people can't. Have you seen any influencers do a really good job in that sense, like that the learnings of them can be adopted by an athlete?
I feel like a lot of the athletic content or sporting content that I see that doesn't work is just really boring and dry. Like nobody really wants to know like how to pass a ball or kick a ball. Like there's a million videos on there, right? They kind of want to see past the veil of that polish. They want this window into your personal world. If they're following you, right, they're following you for a reason, because they're actually interested in you. So give them a window into your world. Document how you're cooking your dinners. Document like yourself talking to your dog or talking with hanging out with your mates. Like, give them a window into your world. That's really the best advice I can give. Not just be like a boring, dry bit of wallpaper. Give them a bit of spice.
So in Australia, we have tall poppy syndrome. Do you think influencers have helped correct that?
No.
No?
No, I don't think we can ever get rid of that. It's going to be... I don't think... I mean, maybe it's helped a little bit, but... I think Australia's a tough market. I mean, I've been exposed to a few markets, but definitely Australia and Britain to some extent. Like, if you get a bit above your station, Australians aren't afraid to kind of chop you back down. And I think like there's still from a social media perspective, I think you always see articles in the Daily Mail about an influencer getting unstuck and everybody's cheering them on. So there's always going to be people out there that don't want to see you succeed. You just got to kind of run your own game and make sure you're focused specifically on what your end game is.
Now, you're APAC, right? You're the business you run.
Yeah.
What's another market outside of Australia that you look at and go, wow, that's the influencer market is crazy, and what's happening in it?
For me, it's probably Indonesia. Indonesia, like it's a crazy market. I mean, they're mad in a lot of different sports, not so much AFL and those kind of sports, but soccer and a bunch of others. 270 million people, I think, in Indonesia. So third or fourth most populous country in the world. Really large middle class coming through, and a super, super young demographic also. So I think like the average age is something like, don't quote me on this, 26, 27. So really, really young. But they've kind of skipped credit cards and just gone straight to like digital wallets. So the amount of social commerce that's actually working in Indonesia is nuts. So being able to purchase via influencers on TikTok whilst they're doing a live stream, it's just fascinating, right? And you can be able to get that within the hour to your door and pay cash too at the same time. Indonesia is just like a crazy, crazy market for me.
One of my favourite stories is around Coach Prime. I don't know if you know who he is, but Coach Prime is a former NFL and baseball player, won a Super Bowl, won a World Championship, and then became a college ball coach. And Coach Prime is for Colorado. He knows his brand. I've never seen anybody know their brand quite as well as he does. Maybe Anthony Mundine in Australia is probably an example, but he's not as polarising. He wears glasses, big gold chain, and he played another team during the year, and the coach said, "Oh, well, I was always taught that when I speak to people, I don't wear my sunglasses and my hat." And long story short, he'd already had a sunglass deal and gave out all of the sunnies to the team, and little Wayne came out singing as they walked out, and The Rock was there, and they all got glasses. They sold $1.2 million worth of glasses that night.
That
online.
is nuts. The power of social media to actually sell products is nuts.
So is there an Australian example of that you can point to and go, hey, it doesn't matter whether it's sport or not, where you go, hey, that they help sell a crazy amount of product?
At the moment, I would say probably one of the most prolific creators that can actually move product at the moment is an OnlyFans creator called Anna Paul, actually based in the Gold Coast. She has such a hardcore audience, and it's not dudes just following her to, see her OnlyFans content. It's actually young girls too. So you ask any 15, 16-year-old girl who their favorite creator is, they very may well sell, say Anna Paul. And she's able, she just launched her own makeup brand, and it's doing phenomenally well. It's crazy.
I've got it. I understand. Is she doing the OnlyFans content, or is she just using the OnlyFans channel as a subscription model?
She's doing OnlyFans. As far I don't subscribe. So my wife.
It's research.
No, I'm pretty sure she's doing OnlyFans content. So one side of her audience is thirsty males, I think, and then the other side of her content is young females. It's a weird one, but it's working super well.
Do you see Australia ever having a Logan Paul?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no reason why we can't have the next Logan Paul or KSI in Australia. I think it's going to happen. It will happen no matter what. And there's kind of, maybe not as big as Logan Paul, but we've had countless of examples of creators and YouTubers that are, 10 million subscribers. Laserbeam is probably one of the biggest examples that we can point to here.
That's what I've actually said to a lot of athletes. So if you play rugby union as an example, whether you're male or female, there's a really big audience internationally on it. You don't have to play a sport that's massive in Australia to build audience, because content and context is really important. So you might be contextually right for another area of the world of sport. Like you spoke about soccer before with Indonesia, right? Like soccer's the world game, right? If you played soccer, you can build an audience virtually any part of the world, right?
Absolutely. But also, just go back to your point, I think passion, going through passion points, right? It could be lacrosse, it could be diving. don't think about your audience just being specifically to Australia. You know, there may only be like 20,000 diving fans, hardcore diving fans in Australia, but worldwide there's probably several 100,000 diving fans. So really look at how you can connect with that audience too.
And if you worked with an employer, so if you're an athlete, you have an employer, and it might be the Australian Institute of Sport or a governing body or somebody, a national sporting organisation, most of them have some sort of content teams. Would you be working with them and trying to help build out audience?
I think, like my honest opinion, like try and do it yourself. Try and do most of the work yourself. Otherwise, people are stretched resource-wise, I would say. So the more you can do by yourself on your phone, the better, in my opinion.
And if you're an athlete who's 14 or 15 and you've got parents, and the parents are really concerned, they're like, listen, I want my kid to be this healthy specimen and be an athlete. Should they go on social? What do you say to parents about that have got kids that are on that tipping point?
Most of like the young adults or kids that we've worked with in the past, they have a pretty good support system. Like we don't want to get too involved in what the parent thinks right or wrong. We will try and support them where possible, but if you can do things like turn off comments, so comments aren't coming through to the kid. But we try and work with parents, guide them in like what we think is the right idea. But at the end of the day, there's only so much we can control with them.
Okay, so if you're a parent of a child that has potential to be somewhat of stature in sport,
yeah,
and you're really thinking through whether, hey, should I let them go on the social and should I start building an audience? What's your recommendation?
What advice would I give to parents? Every kid's different, everyone's unique, but I've got kids myself, and the advice I think the advice I'd give to them is like, are you ready? Like, go in there eyes wide open. Like it can be like a bit of a toxic place, right? So do things like turn off the comments. But I think the upside of social and content and the commercial opportunity and the audience opportunity definitely outweighs the downside of it.
Going into, when you're first starting out, it's a bit different when you actually got brand deals going on and you're going along quite nicely. When you build your presentation, I see a lot of people make the mistake they try and put in so much into a presentation and like it ends up being this really bloated document that's way too long with way too much information. What do you, like when you're reading a document, I know we touched on data before, but what are you seeing in presentations / documents that you go, it's well thought out? People
are like opening a million emails a day. There's too many things and notifications coming at people every single day. So the people are time poor. So I guess like make your message pretty snappy. Get to the point really, really quickly, figure out what your unique selling point is, put like the key metrics out there. So key metrics being overall follow account on each individual platform, like what your mission is, where your audience is located, just the really key things. And yeah, if they need more detail, they'll ask for more detail. But try and, what's the saying? Sell the sizzle, not the steak.
And finally, what's the big advice around content that you would give out? Like if you're rolling into this area and everyone's on social within reason, right? What's your advice?
I'm going to go back to it again. Passion. Choose a content pillar or a platform that you're actually passionate about. So a particular, whether it's gaming, whether it's cooking, whether it's just you want to open up a little bit about your lifestyle to people, but just choose a passion. Secondarily, consistency. Make sure you're consistent with the content that you're producing. So whether it's every day, whether it's every week, or whether it's every month, just make sure you're producing that content on a consistent basis. And then I'd say pick a few platforms that you can consistently produce on. So whether that's TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, or even Twitch. Don't try and be everything to everyone. Pick 2 or 3 platforms that you can consistently produce on.
Tom, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Ben.